Hey guys, this week we're talking about what is a fiction narrative, and you're going to write a fiction narrative. So, I want to go over what it is with you and different elements that you find when you write fiction narrative. I've added a video of a story, a read aloud for you before every lesson this week. So, I hope you enjoyed those during your writing time. Okay, so what is a fiction narrative? It is a story that did not happen. It didn't happen really. It can be realistic or unrealistic. So it means it's something that could really happen, but it didn't really happen. Or unrealistic is like something that could totally never happen, like the cow that talked. Anyway, so some examples of fiction narrative are A Bad Case of the Stripes, The Velveteen Rabbit, and Bud Not Buddy. So see if you can think of any. Maybe you enjoy reading fiction narrative. Okay, fiction narratives have characters. They can be realistic or unrealistic. You have your main character, and a question you can ask yourself when you're thinking about writing about your characters: are they going to be human? Are they going to be animal? Are they going to be something else? What is their name? How old are they? What do they look like? What are their interests and character traits? So here's an example. Sarah is a 10-year-old girl who is very shy but loves to draw and paint. She just moved into a new home. Okay, that's going to be this person's main character. But you also have secondary characters. So let's read about some of her secondary characters. Jessica is Sarah's neighbor who also loves to draw and paint. Sarah's mom is always busy taking care of her baby brother and cleaning up after him. A large raven who visits Sarah in her treehouse. So, Sarah's the main character, Jessica, Sarah's mom, and a raven are secondary characters. Okay, fiction narratives also have a setting. That's where it takes place and when it takes place. So, let's read this person's example of where it takes place. Sarah's treehouse. It is empty and lonely with a rug, one camping chair, and 4 windows on each wall. And when it takes place, a span of several days in the afternoons during the summer. And then we have a place for additional scene setting. Sarah's home is going to be an additional scene, or an additional setting, sorry. It's a 2-story home painted blue in the middle of a cul-de-sac that Sarah's family just moved into. There are boxes still sitting in corners waiting to be unpacked, and rooms empty and bare without furniture. So you can really see Sarah's home by what is written right here. Okay, fiction narrative also has a problem and a solution. The problem is a challenge the character must solve. The solution is how the character solves the challenge. So let's read the sample problem. Sarah moves into a new home during the summer and is having a hard time making friends because she is shy. Her mother is always busy taking care of her baby brother and trying to unpack. So she usually sends Sarah out to her treehouse to play in the afternoons. And then the solution, how the character solves the challenge. A raven flies into the treehouse and listens to Sarah. The next day, the same raven flies in and drops a paintbrush. The next day, it comes back and drops several pieces of paper. Sarah realizes that the raven wants her to paint. So she finds her box of art supplies and sets up an easel in her treehouse. Her neighbor Jessica watches the raven dropping items from her yard. She finally peeks over and asks what the bird was doing and sees Jessica painting. Okay, now fiction narrative also has point of view. Who's telling the story? And how did they see the story? So we can read, or a writer can write from different points of views. We could write from the main character's point of view, and that would look like this. Sarah would talk about how lonely she is and how she wishes she could meet a new friend. The secondary character, we could read the story or write the story from the secondary character's point of view. So the raven could talk about how lonely Sarah looks and that he has a plan to help her make a new friend. So that would be written from the raven's point of view. If we wrote our story from Jessica's point of view, we might write about how we wonder what that raven's doing, dropping all that stuff next door in the treehouse, and how we walked over there to see. Okay, the story can also be written from the narrator's point of view, and that's a voice that is not a character in the story that can tell about how Sarah, Jessica, and the raven feel throughout the story. So it would be somebody completely not even in the story telling us about the story. Okay, so something we have to think about when we're writing a fiction narrative is writing a lead, or how you're going to begin your story or hook your readers in. So we've got different types of leads: sound, talking, and action. And then we have some examples that this author considers boring leads. A raven landed on my treehouse window. A lead that hooks would be to word it like this: chirp, chirp, a beautiful raven landed on my treehouse window and seemed to be talking to me. This one's a lot more interesting than this one, isn't it? Okay, talking leads, the boring lead. My mom sent me outside to play and find new friends. Okay, a lead that hooks would be written this way: I can't take you to the park today, Sarah. You should go out to your treehouse and read a book, my mom suggested as she began unpacking boxes. So we see in the lead that hooks, we have quotation marks because her mom is actually talking to her. And then a boring action lead would just be to say, I was lonely. But a lead that hooks would be, I climbed up to the treehouse and sat down on the old rug. As I sat there thinking about how sad and lonely I was in my new home, a beautiful raven flew in and sat on the window. Okay, so we have to think of an exciting way to hook people in when we're writing, and that's our lead. We don't want to have boring leads. Okay, next, developing the setting. Okay, a good writer is going to show, don't tell. When you tell something, you just simply say it. He was in the kitchen. I jumped off the diving board. She went to the park. And in our writing, a lot of us tend to do this. We just tell what we're doing. But I want you to visualize, make a picture in your head when I read the showing examples. Instead of just saying he was in the kitchen, we could help all our senses feel and smell and see what's happening. A sweet aroma guided me down the hallway. As I walked in, I saw piles of dishes in the sink. A cookbook was wide open with what seemed like 100 ingredients spilling over on the counter. It looked like a tornado came through the kitchen, but it smelled like heaven. Wasn't that one much more interesting than just saying he was in the kitchen? Okay, let's read the next one. Instead of just saying I jumped off the diving board, how would we explain that? This author said, my legs trembled as I climbed the never-ending steps to the top. When I finally reached the diving board, I took a deep breath and slowly walked to the edge. I peeked over the side at the water below, and my heart skipped a beat. The water below looked so far away. You can really see the picture and feel the excitement and fear that this writer is writing about. Okay, so the last one, instead of she went to the park, you could write it this way: she walked across the grass and observed the wide open space in front of her. Some families were laying on picnic blankets, watching their kids running around with kites. Some were playing frisbee and others were playing catch with their dogs. Okay, so show what's going on by using all kinds of descriptive words instead of just telling very simply, she went to the park. Okay, guys, we're going to do 2 more, and then that's all we're going to do today. Your story needs to have a plot. What happens next? Keep your readers in suspense. The plot is what's happening, okay? The events of the story. And a good story is going to have rising action. So that's the events that lead up to the problem. The climax, and that's when the problem is at its peak or its worst. And then the falling action is events that lead to the solution. And then you have your solution. Okay, so rising action, events that lead to the problem. Sarah is sent to her treehouse by her mom to read. Sarah begins to talk to a raven that flew in. The raven comes back for several days, dropping art supplies in the treehouse. The climax, the problem at its worst. Sarah's neighbor Jessica watches the raven fly to the treehouse for several days. She wants to ask what it is doing, but is also too shy. Okay? The falling action, the events that lead to the solution. Jessica gets the courage to ask Sarah what the bird is doing. The raven flies past again and drops a paintbrush for Jessica. Sarah invites Jessica up to her treehouse. And then the solution is that Jessica climbs up to the treehouse and the 2 girls immediately become best friends. Okay, this is what happens in the story plot. Guys, if you have any questions about your work, just email me and I can get on a WebEx with you. I hope y'all are having a great week and I can't wait to see you soon.